Hello, this is Dr. Lori. Welcome back to our discussion on study design. This next type of study design that I would like to share with you can be a little confusing. A lot of times it's not included in your kind of standard textbook discussion, but in public health we actually do see quite a bit of this, and so I'd like to include it for that reason, but also because it can be confused very easily with other study designs. So the study design that I'd like to talk about is the case report. And the reason that it's confusing with other types of study designs is because the same word is used here. It can often be confused with case control studies that we will be learning about later. I'll be sure to point out the important differences, but it helps to know exactly what a case report or a case series is, and that will kind of answer that question as well. A case report is when a person, maybe a scientist or a public health professional, notices something unusual that's happening. And so they write a description of that particular case, that one patient, and they publish it. And so I think a lot of you have probably seen this in the published literature. Hey, there's this really interesting case of a patient who came in with such and such a symptoms, and I don't know if anybody else has seen something like this before. A really great sort of recent example of a case report is in the early AIDS epidemic. So back in the 80s, there were some doctors in either New York City or San Francisco area that were noticing these very unusual cases of young men who were coming in with these strange diseases that usually only affected the very old, pneumocystis carinii, those kinds of things where they said, why would somebody in their 20s or 30s have this particular disease? I've never noticed this before. And maybe they had one case, and then a few months later they had another case. And so they said, I'm going to write this up. I'm going to share it with my scientific community. Other people who are in the same profession or career that I am in might be interested in knowing that I'm noticing this. Maybe somebody else is also noticing this exact same thing. And so a case report is where we report one case. A case series is maybe there are two or a few cases, but the important thing to realize is that there is no comparison group. This is way over here on the spectrum of kinds of studies that we do. We're literally just reporting about the cases. We're not trying to even compare them to anybody else. We realize that this is something unusual, but we don't really need to compare them to anybody because we've never noticed that young people could have these strange diseases. So a case report by definition is that we were reporting some kind of unusual case or collection of cases. Now, the strength of this, which comes from that notion of reporting unusual cases, is that we can create a very early report of something that's unusual. We don't have to try to find groups of people to compare to. We don't need to spend any energy or resources to set anything up. And so it's a really early reporting of something that's out of the usual. The limitation then automatically that comes out of just reporting cases is that we have essentially no comparison group. We don't have a group of people that we think is similar, but is where we can compare them across some different variables. That comes later. So this is a really very basic observational kind of study design. It's as basic as it can possibly get. So a case report or a case series, a series of case reports, can have some real strengths, Doesn't cost very much. It doesn't take time to follow these people forward, but it is hypothesis generating. And so we really can't test hypotheses with a case report. We're it's kind of like a really super simple version of a cross-sectional study in many ways, because we're just noticing all these things collectively about a patient, probably pretty much at the same time. So that is a summary of the case report and case series. Thank you so much for joining me.